Imagine yourself kneeling beside a faded photograph in which Thomas and Clara Harper stand smiling with their two children, Marcus, just 12 years old, and their 8-year-old daughter Latasha, eyes shining with happiness under the golden glow of Pinewood sunset through the pines. That photo was taken on the afternoon of August 14, 1979. But just 20 hours later, the Harpers vanished completely into those forested hills. They had set off for a carefree camping trip, embracing each other in joy. No one could have guessed that a single night would erase their presence from these woods for 16 long years. 16 years later, in the autumn of 1995, Ranger Miller, now in his 50s, hair streaked silver from decades spent deep in Pinewood, paddled along a dried-up creek as he conducted his routine patrol. He called out names as though searching for 4 anonymous bodies, until he spotted something unexpected. A faded green Ford Torino, an old family car belonging to the Harpers, sticking out of the mud at the edge of the creek bed. Its interior was thick with mildew and dust. Inside the trunk, 3 items evoked a pang of painful memory. A small set of children's clothes, worn thin, a dark brown leather wallet, and a yellowed notebook whose edges had darkened over time. Whenever Miller opened that notebook, he shuddered at the tremulous handwriting on the final page. Deep Pine, 8/15/79. They never returned. No one had ever been able to confirm whether those words were Thomas's or Clara's, but they clearly echoed the cruel truth from 16 years earlier, that the Harper family's disappearance remained a bitter, unresolved mystery locked away in that old journal. Now, I want to tell you the full story of the Harper family, from their bright days under Greenwood's sun to the nightmare that fell upon them in 1979, through a long, fruitless investigation, and finally, the miracle of their reunion 16 years later. Picture yourself sitting in a living room warmed by bittersweet recollections, the wind rustling outside the porch. I will share with you each chapter of their journey, full of hope, anguish, and eventually tears of joy. Greenwood, South Carolina, July 1979. This small town is nestled amid cotton fields, wheat fields, and pine woods. In Greenwood, folks seldom lock their doors during the day, and children run freely up and down Main Street. The church bells ring out every Sunday morning, mingling with the steady chirp of crickets. Narrow asphalt roads wind between ancient oak trees whose branches arch overhead, offering a soothing canopy of green. On wooden porches, people like Mrs. Sanders, Sally and Mrs. Maureen sit with iced tea, chatting about summer's warmth. The sound of children's laughter drifts from the schoolyard, while somewhere in the distance, a youngster practices drumming. In this setting, the small wooden house at 14 Maple Avenue was home to the happiest smiles this town had ever seen. Thomas Harper, 38 years old, was a skillful carpenter who took on all sorts of construction work around Greenwood, repairing leaky roofs, crafting song-tan doors, and even building custom kitchen cabinets for the roadside diner. He had a broad, sturdy frame, calloused hands from hammering nails, and a warm, hearty laugh. His wife, 36-year-old Clara Harper, worked as a devoted nurse at Greenwood County Hospital. Each evening when Thomas arrived home, Clara switched from caring for patients to caring for her husband, lightly stocking bandages and soothing tips about life, then swapped stories at home, from successful but difficult births to the woes of an elderly woman on crutches raising 2 grandchildren alone. Their son Marcus, 12 years old and already standing at 5 feet tall, had a round, serious-looking face for a kid obsessed with basketball. Every morning, Marcus would dash into the backyard, shooting hoops on a makeshift rim, constantly challenging his reflexes. His 8-year-old sister Latasha was small and bright-eyed, endlessly curious about the world. She adored her harmonica, a gift from her grandmother Della, a former army nurse, and every night she would play a gentle lullaby to soothe her younger cousins under the soft glow of a porch light. Latasha's harmonica tunes drifted all over Maple Avenue, weaving a picture of a cozy, loving family. Then there were the grandparents. Grandmother Della, a retired military nurse with silver streaks in her hair, always carried a worn-out tissue in her pocket, ready to wipe away the tears of her grandchildren. She'd lean on the porch railing, smiling at Marcus and Latasha as they played, laughing at their childhood tales. Grandfather Horace, a former Navy veteran, could be glimpsed wandering the local streets or dropping by the school to see his grandchildren. In his eyes, every smile on a grandchild's face was a priceless remedy for life's wounds. The memory of Grandmother Della telling bedtime stories about wild ducks, or Grandfather Horace and Thomas building a loft to gaze at the stars, all painted a portrait of the Harper family's bliss, a living portrait of simple, pastoral happiness. During June and July of 1979, Marcus buzzed up and down Maple Avenue, discussing a camping trip. One evening in early August, as summer waned, Thomas declared, "This weekend, we're all piling into the car and heading for Pinewood National Forest." Clara eagerly compiled a lengthy packing list: sleeping bags, pots and pans, a first aid kit, warm clothes, and sturdy hiking boots. Marcus insisted on bringing his North Carolina basketball, itching to test his dribbling skills among the trees. Latasha couldn't care less about hoops. She simply focused on choosing songs to practice on her harmonica: Amazing Grace, You Are My Sunshine, and a few Appalachian folk tunes. Grandma Della teased her, "Sit still, girl, no owl is going to stir and bother you out there," and chuckled at her granddaughter's determination. Most important was Latasha's dream of watching the fireflies light up along the banks of Clearwater Creek. So Clara bought long-lasting flashlights, a canister of camp stove fuel, a small wicker basket for dry food, and a few boxes of gummy bears. Grandfather Horace taught Marcus how to identify animal tracks in the forest and how to avoid running into rattlesnakes. Their itinerary was printed on paper. Depart Maple Avenue on Saturday morning. Arrive at Deep Pine Campground by 11 a.m. Pitch the tent and eat lunch. Stroll along the creek. Sing around the campfire in the evening. Then on Sunday morning, have breakfast, clean up, visit Pine Fork Lake, and head back to Greenwood by midday. Everything seemed carefully arranged for a perfect trip. On the morning of August 9th, 1979, with the sky clear and the air crisp, the green Ford Torino waited at the curb in front of Maple Avenue. Thomas and Marcus lifted camping gear into the trunk, while Clara watched Latasha tuck her harmonica safely into her knapsack. The grandparents accompanied the children to the edge of the driveway and waved tearfully as the car pulled away down the road. The route to Pinewood National Forest was about 80 miles long, meandering past cotton fields and wheat fields under a bright summer sun. Marcus, craning his neck out the window, stared wide-eyed at the passing scenery. Every few minutes, he'd ask Granddad, "How much farther, Grandpa?" Horace would reply, "About a few more miles, son. I promise, once you break that school basketball record, I'll take you back to Pinewood for fishing." Marcus nodded, delighted. Latasha sat beside Clara, playing her harmonica and softly singing as they traveled. Clara smiled at her children, then turned to Thomas. "You sure we packed everything?" she asked. Thomas gave her a thumbs up. "Of course, no one packs more carefully than my amazing wife from West Carolina." By around 11 that morning, they arrived at the Pinewood National Forest entrance. There, Ranger Miller, about 40 years old, fit and bearded, greeted them. He squinted at the dust-caked Torino. "Sign in here, folks. I'll need your names and license plate. And remember, campfires only in designated areas." Thomas presented the registration slip, and Marcus waved his basketball at Miller. "Sir, can I shoot some hoops right now?" Miller cracked a grin. "Once you're signed in, come on over. I'll show you a clearing where you can play." They were directed to Campground 7, a flat clearing beside Clearwater Creek. Towering pines surrounded them, and the air was tinged with the earthy scent of damp grass. Large boulders lined the creek bank like sentinels. Thomas, unhurried, set up the tent, while Marcus hammered stakes into the ground. Latasha recognized the native trees from pictures in her school science book. Clara, once the tent was secure, prepared lunch: chicken sandwiches, fresh fruit salad, and cold orange juice. That sweet, crisp flavor mingled with the pine-scented breeze, soothing everyone. Later that afternoon, Marcus and Thomas walked down to Pine Fork Lake. The water gleamed like glass, rippling only where they skimmed stones. Fish darted around a rickety wooden dock. Marcus peeled off his t-shirt and dove into the cool water, while Thomas cast a small fishing line. Latasha stayed on shore, blowing harmonica notes toward the fish, while tossing breadcrumbs into the water to watch them gather. Clara sat at a distance, smoking a single cigarette, listening to the leaves rustle in the breeze. Everything felt oddly peaceful. They returned to their campsite at dusk, stacked a small pile of firewood, and lit a campfire beneath a blanket of stars. Grandmother and grandfather settled onto old folding chairs and shared stories of grandmother's time nursing in the military and tales of grandfather's Navy days. Latasha puffed her harmonica gently, singing "You Are My Sunshine" until the melody quieted. Marcus practiced one last jump shot into an imaginary hoop. He shouted, "Dad, tonight I'll get that point." Thomas patted his son's shoulder with pride, saying, "Good job, son. But first you have to—" Marcus cut him off. Forget it. Marshmallows first." And everyone's laughter rippled into the starlit forest. That was the last time the Harper family's laughter echoed across these woods. As night deepened, a cool breeze rustled the pine branches, and that warm, joyful glow would vanish forever. No one knew that for the next 16 years, those memories would exist only in the aching hearts of those left behind. Late on the night of August 15th, 1979, a gentle breeze stirred through the pines, lulling most of the Harper family to sleep. Inside the tent, Clara covered Latasha with a blanket. Her little sister had fallen asleep after playing harmonica all afternoon. Marcus cuddled a round pillow tightly, dreaming of sinking baskets. Thomas lay beside them, propping the tent flap against a wooden frame as the dying embers of their campfire flickered outside. The grandparents sat on folding chairs, sipping warm tea and listening to the leaves whisper overhead. A moment later, a sudden gust of wind rattled the tent. Marcus mumbled, "Dad, Dad," in his sleep, then fell silent. Latasha's lips moved faintly. "Sister, come play," before her harmonica hummed to a stop. That same night, an unfamiliar set of footsteps brushed the ground around their campsite. It could have been the wind or an animal passing through, but when the footsteps came again, steady and deliberate, as though someone were peering in, Thomas snapped awake. He lifted his flashlight to the tent ceiling, then unzipped the flap a crack to peek outside. Moonlight pierced through the pine canopy, illuminating only shadows. Thomas saw a tall figure wearing a black leather jacket and a brimmed hat, standing a few feet away, gazing at Latasha, who lay sleeping beside a small campfire. Marcus remained asleep beneath his covers. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind slammed the tent, extinguishing the campfire. In that instant, Thomas lost sight of the figure. When the fire reignited under a separate breeze, the tent was empty. The camp was deserted. The tent stood open. Ashes of the fire lay scattered, and everyone, Thomas, Clara, Marcus, and Latasha, was gone. Only the flowing creek and rustling insects remained. Clara bolted upright, her blanket draped over her shoulders. She peered out, her heart racing. She called, "Thomas, Marcus, Latasha." No answer. Grandmother Della leapt from her chair, shining her flashlight toward the creek and calling the children's names. Grandfather Horace, trembling, muttered, "Where could they have gone?" But the night remained silent. By morning's first light, they alerted the rangers, brought in canine units, plastered flyers throughout the forest, and enlisted the Greenwood County Sheriff's Office and even National Guard support. Each passing day tightened the knot of anxiety. Clara and Thomas clung to the faint memory of Marcus's and Latasha's bright faces, but got no reply. In the pale dawn, Miller arrived with 5 other rangers. They fanned out in search grids, scouring the campground, creek banks, and unused cabins. Every footprint in the soft earth seemed to vanish inside the dense foliage. Highway 221, clogged with locals, drawn by the sight of heavy machinery. Helicopters circled overhead, searching for any irregularity among the trees, but Pinewood's canopy and leaf litter limited visibility to a few feet. Bloodhounds traced scents along the creek, detecting the faintest whiff of gasoline or torn fabric snagged on twigs. A single scrap of torn denim, later identified as from Marcus's jeans, ignited a spark of hope, but the trail swiftly dissolved at a steep, rocky outcrop. Miller thought, someone may have dragged the car down the ravine and left it there. Yet the green Ford Torino remained missing. Exhausted and soaked in sweat, they all sank under the weight of unfulfilled hope. By mid-December, after 4 fruitless months of searching, winter arrived harshly, obscuring any signs beneath frost and snow. The rescue party reluctantly withdrew, filing their final report with the sheriff's office. No remains found, no evidence of accident or foul play. They concluded that the Harper family had likely been abducted and removed from the forest. Over the next 15 years, the case faded from public view. Greenwood's local news occasionally ran a brief segment reminding viewers of the Harpers' disappearance, but hope dwindled. Thomas and Clara sold their Maple Avenue home and moved into a small downtown apartment, unwilling to face that empty yard. Marcus and Latasha spent most days in their grandmother's care, going to school and trying to live a normal life. Marcus chased basketball dreams, vowing to become a professional one day. Latasha continued practicing her harmonica and sometimes performed in the local church, hoping the melody might draw someone's attention. But memories are not easily erased, and hope slowly fractured. By 1994, Clara had been promoted to head nurse at Greenwood County Hospital, now overseeing burn victims and their families, witnessing countless tragedies of parents missing children. Thomas ran a small woodworking shop, still hoping to fund a memorial for Pinewood's veterans, an endeavor to honor his own daughter's spirit. Yet deep down, they both recognized how worn out they were. In Clara's heart lived a nightly ache. They could still be out there somewhere. In September 1995, after a severe storm had flooded many streams in Pinewood, Clearwater Creek's waters receded, revealing mud and debris along its banks. Ranger Miller, now aged 52 and with 15 years of forest duty behind him, returned to check the aftermath. As he glided his canoe along the shallow water, he couldn't shake the memory of the Harpers' disappearance. Suddenly, among the mud, he glimpsed a pale green shape. Exclaiming, "Something's down there on the creek bank," he waded into the muck and probed with his wooden pole. Gradually, the outline of a battered Ford Torino emerged, a broken windshield, wheels half buried, dents covering its sides. Miller's heart pounded as he radioed the federal authorities. "I've found evidence of the Harper family after 16 years. Detective Ellen Keane, 35, with a face marked by countless investigations and eyes carrying a perpetual sadness, led the FBI team that drove to Clearwater Creek. She inhaled the musty odor of decaying wood and bent down to remove the twisted camp tarp near a tangle of undergrowth. There it was, the green Ford, encrusted with mold and dust. Donning protective gloves, Ellen carefully opened the trunk. 3 items inside immediately stood out: a neatly folded child's outfit, a faded brown plaid shirt, and a pair of jeans stained with dried mud. In one torn corner, a faint smear of blood remained. A worn brown leather wallet, its cover cracked. Inside lay a family portrait from 1978, grandmother Della and grandfather Horace, Thomas and Clara, and young Marcus and Latasha standing before their Maple Avenue home, all smiles shining. A black notebook, its cover yellowed with age. On its final page appeared, in hasty, trembling script, "Deep Pine, 8/15/79. They never returned." Below that line was a scrawled signature, B. Sanders. Ellen's gaze widened. Bill Sanders, once suspected of trafficking weapons, now emerged as the most likely key to the Harper disappearance. But how exactly was he tied to the family's fate? Ellen and her team traced winding forest roads deeper into Pinewood until they arrived at a secluded wooden cabin, weathered, moss-covered, and partially hidden by towering pines. Bill Sanders, now 58, appeared gaunt, hunched over, wearing a worn-out fedora tipped low. When he saw the FBI agents, he pleaded, "I just wanted to live in peace, nothing more." But the agents discovered a small wooden bed frame inside, scorched marks from a long-extinguished fire, graffiti on the wall reading "No policing here," an old basketball skewer peeking from under a cooking pot, and a moldy harmonica on a rickety shelf. Bill protested, "I only meant to teach them, never harm them." Yet there was no escaping charges of child abduction and unlawful confinement. Ellen gathered a swab of denim fibers from the child's clothing and a blood sample from the driver's seat cushion, sending them to the crime lab. When the lab confirmed that the dried blood on those jeans matched Thomas's and Clara's DNA, Ellen realized Bill Sanders had indeed abducted the Harper children. But if Marcus had been there, was Latasha still alive at the age of 24, or had she perished? After Bill's arrest, the FBI turned its full attention to Marcus. When Marcus, now 28, sun-scarred and lean, was dragged out into the morning light, he wore a battered basketball cap and a well-worn t-shirt. His eyes reflected a mix of skepticism and deep sorrow. Ellen gently asked, "Marcus, do you know who you are?" He stared at her, searching for something inside his memory. I think my name is Michael Reed. Someone told me my parents were named Donald and Jesse, not Thomas and Clara." Ellen nodded, handing him the 1978 family photograph of the Harpers. Marcus's hand trembled as he recognized faces. "Mom, Dad, Marcus? I am Marcus, right?" His voice cracked as tears welled. I missed you so much." Thomas stumbled forward, heartfelt relief shining through his tears as he embraced Marcus. "You survived? You believe your parents missed you?" Marcus nodded and collapsed into his father's arms, tears streaming. Clara, standing behind them, cheeks wet with tears, mouthed, "Oh, my child, I searched for you all these years. I never abandoned you." Their reunion took place inside an FBI vehicle, where the 4 Harpers clung to each other. Their hearts pounded in unison. 16 years of agony vanished in that one embrace. But the search for Latasha remained. Marcus, looking gaunt but determined, recounted faint memories. He had been kept in that cabin, instructed to call himself Michael Reed and not to reveal anything. Then Bill vanished one day, leaving Marcus stranded, and he was subsequently shuffled around by criminals. Eventually, someone left him outside a Greenwood boarding house, where a kindly widow named Margaret Petty found him. She gave him the name Michael Reed and a place to stay. Meanwhile, his sister Latasha, now 24, was sold to another family, taken in by a different widow also named Margaret Petty, a coincidence that stunned the investigators, and renamed Leah. Ellen spoke with the first Margaret Petty, who lived in a cramped, cluttered house under a dim yellow light. "I bought Leah from an underground adoption ring. She barely spoke for a while, just mumbled nonsense and called me Mom. I never imagined she had a real family." Leah listened, silent. When Clara and Thomas stepped through that doorway, Margaret's expression faltered. You're Harper? No, Clara Harper, right?" Latasha, who now recognized those voices, looked up, uncertain. "Mom, Dad, are you really my parents?" Clara nodded tearfully. "Yes, my sweet child. I am your mother, and he is your father. I searched for you every day for 16 years. Latasha collapsed into her mother's arms, hands gripping tightly, tears finally finding release. Meanwhile, Bill Sanders, formerly just a suspect, faced trial for abducting children, unlawful confinement, and trafficking illegal substances. The trial was held at Greenwood County Courthouse. In the gallery, Marcus held his sister's hand while Latasha clung to her mother. Grandmother Della and grandfather Horace, now well into their 80s with truly silver hair, watched from the front row, tears in their eyes. Bill insisted, "I never wanted to harm them. I thought I was protecting them." The judge looked down solemnly. "You held those children captive for 16 years. A life sentence is imposed for each of your 3 convictions." Bill was led away in handcuffs. Clara gripped her children's hands, recalling Bill's final letter. "I could not forget them. Jay, I only wanted them to have a new home." Her heart ached, but forgiveness was impossible. Her children had endured a living nightmare. In that courtroom, Marcus wept. "Mom, I only wanted to hear your voice for 16 years." The judge's gavel pounded. Bill Sanders is guilty of child abduction, unlawful confinement, drug trafficking, and child trafficking. The sentence is life without parole. All eyes turned to Latasha, tears streaming down as she looked at her parents. After the trial, Marcus and Latasha returned to Maple Avenue, a house covered in fallen leaves. The home had been freshly painted warm yellow, the white picket fence restored, and phlox vines blooming in season. Clara began each morning by brewing hot tea and walking her 2 children down the sidewalk, no longer hunting for signs in the forest. Marcus occasionally carried a basketball across the aged wooden floorboards, the boards creaking as he practiced his shot from 27 feet, the same distance he once dreamed he would conquer. Latasha, now 24, resumed her harmonica practice, but had shifted to a deeper blues jazz style, occasionally performing in the small Greenwood church on autumn nights. Clara spent her time sharing her family's story with the Second Chance Network, an organization Ellen Keane had founded to help families of missing children. She comforted mothers who still held out hope. "Never give up. Your child may be out there listening for your voice, waiting to come home." She also taught guidance counselors and community volunteers how to support children recovering from trauma. Thomas, meanwhile, worked tirelessly in his woodshop. He crafted small wooden keepsake boxes carved with the Pinewood pine tree motif, selling them to campers and visitors. Each carved box bore witness to the Harper's ordeal, even as Thomas carried a lingering scar in his own heart. Marcus enrolled in the University of North Carolina's clinical psychology program, then returned to Greenwood to open a counseling center for at-risk youth. He would tell teenagers, "No one believed my parents were still searching for me, but hope never dies. Keep your spirit strong, and one day you may find your way home." He volunteered afternoons at local after-school programs, sharing his family's experience and encouraging kids to seek solace through basketball and music. Redwood Center, where Marcus worked, soon became a lifeline for many troubled youths, drawn by his story of renewed hope. Latasha, who had once been known as Leah Petty, was now 30 years old and performed harmonica blues at Pinewood Cafe. Positioned under soft cafe lighting, she poured her soul into each haunting note, often bringing patrons to tears. In 2008, she released an album titled "Reed in the Pines," a collection of harmonica blues that recounted her journey through loss and healing. It became a regional phenomenon, touching the hearts of many, especially middle-aged women who saw reflections of their own families in her melodies. Latasha later began offering free harmonica lessons to underprivileged children, believing music can heal the heart. 30 years had passed since the Harper family's disappearance. In August 2009, Greenwood held a memorial service at the county hospital where Clara once nursed. People lined up, holding candles, flowers, and wearing T-shirts emblazoned with Marcus's birth date, 12/8/79, and Latasha's, 8/8/79. To everyone's joy, Marcus and Latasha appeared on a commemorative podium, joined hands, and looked at the crowd with tear-glazed eyes. Thomas and Clara stood behind them, tears trickling down their faces, as though washing away 3 full decades of grief. Grandmother Della, her hands trembling, managed a fragile smile. "You came home at just the right time, so each year has meaning again. Now, take a deep breath and absorb this unshakable truth. Though they went missing, hope never dies." The Harper family, Thomas, Clara, Marcus, and Latasha, once fell into Pinewood's dark night, each certain they would never see the light again. Yet in spite of 16 years of agony, they found each other. Clara emerged a symbol of a mother's unwavering strength and hope. Thomas became a craftsman who preserved memories in wood, and Marcus and Latasha reclaimed themselves, harnessing the power of music and basketball to heal both themselves and others whose lives had shattered. And you, sitting here, perhaps a 40-something or 50-something woman who has watched your own children grow up, who cherishes memories of grandchildren, or who remembers your own mother's embrace. You know the ache of waiting. You understand Latasha's story when she first heard her mother's voice again, "Mama," and how her mother felt when that call filled her heart after all those empty years. You know the agony of waiting for a signal in a vast, silent forest. And you know there are children out there tonight looking for someone to hold them. If you feel hope stirring in your heart for the Harpers, please share their story with anyone who might need it. Let no one wait 16 years to hear "Mama" again. And if you know someone who is missing, call the hotline, 1-800-THE-LOST, 1-800-843-5678. One call, one share can change a life. As this story ends, I wish you the strength to keep your own hope burning bright, because on the journey home, you are never truly alone.